in the 1980s and has been expressed by thinkers. It has deep roots in ancient spiritual traditions and cosmologies, which Aldous Huxley described as the perennial philosophy. When the so-called Enlightenment of the 18th century elevated analytical, scientific reason to dominance in the West, this perennial wisdom, the recognition of humanity's intimate connection to the evolving cosmos, was relegated to a dissident movement labeled Romanticism. Holistic education thus has its roots in the Romantic educational theories of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Pestalozzi, and Froebel. Rousseau, Pestalozzi, and Froebel, along with other holistic educators of 19th and 20th centuries such as transcendentalists William Ellery, Channing, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Bronson Alcott, and Francis Parker, as well as Montessori and Rudolf Steiner, all emphasized the spiritual nature of the human being. Rousseau, although more humanistic than holistic in his approach to education, did provide some underpinnings for holistic education. Rousseau viewed the child as essentially good and believed that the soul of the child should be allowed to unfold according to its own natural pattern. This view of the child as good is a basic assumption of holistic education, which rejects the fundamentalist view that children are born in original sin. Pestalozzi, a Swiss educator influenced by Rousseau, put his ideas into practice. He believed that the classroom should be a place for meaningful activity, and he encouraged teachers to use their intuition. In the past century, two of the most important holistic educators have been Rudolf Steiner and Maria Montessori. Steiner was the founder of the Waldorf school movement, which began shortly after World War I, and has grown since its inception. Steiner distinctly referred to the soul life of children and how it could be nurtured in a school setting. Maria Montessori, the founder of the Montessori school movement, also believed in the importance of nurturing the spiritual development of children. She believed that mental, physical, and spiritual qualities of the human being are supported by a divine life source. With regard to the spiritual aspect, it was her belief that within each person there is a spiritual embryo that is developing according to a divine plan, and the most urgent duty of a teacher to a child was to eliminate as many obstacles to this development as possible. Montessori believed that if children were provided with a nurturing environment, home would direct the natural unfolding of the child's personality and powers so that he or she would become an independent adult. Montessori firmly believed that making children learn things was not as important as keeping intelligence alive. The key, then, is to develop a learning environment in which the child's intelligence can naturally unfold. Perennial philosophy has guided the works of John Miller, Parker Palmer, amongst other contemporary holistic educators. The perennial philosophy usually acknowledges multiple dimensions of reality. In his classic The Perennial Philosophy, Huxley gives a definition. The perennial philosophy is primarily concerned with the one, divine reality substantial to the manifold world of things, and lives, and minds. The main been incorporated themes of perennial philosophy that have by holistic education are divine reality, oneness, wholeness, and multiple dimensions of reality. Indigenous or Aboriginal or native worldviews from all over the world are filled with reverence for nature, the earth, the universe, and the spirit. They emphasize the organic interconnectedness of all beings. The indigenous worldviews are multidimensional in character. According to Black Elk's account, Wakantanka stands for the infinite as well as the finite dimensions. It is everything, and yet above everything, the source and end of everything, and the one who watches over and sustains all life. The major ideas included the indigenous worldview that have been built into the theories and practices of holistic education are reverence for nature, the earth, the universe, and the spirit. the interconnectedness and sacredness of reality, and humans' reintegration with nature. The concept of a life has a central importance for many holistic educators. Ron Miller introduced the term a life-centered to describe the spiritually rooted, holistic education. The philosophy of life, or life philosophy, assumes that there exists a fundamental life force, or a universal life process. The life in this sense is both a transcendental and immanent principle of the cosmic world. This orientation of holistic education conceives education as an integral part of the greater life process. That is, education is a manifestation of life, and at the same time a vehicle in the service of reconnecting human life with the fundamental life. This life force generates and organizes all beings in the cosmos. Our lives have a purpose, a direction, a meaning, and a goal that transcends our personal egos and particular physical and cultural conditioning. It recognizes that we are connected, at deep and profound levels, to the continuing evolution of life and the universe. The ecological perspective is so integral in contemporary holistic education that the term holistic is often interchangeably used with ecological. A large part of holistic education can be seen as ecological holistic education. The holistic philosophy would seem to forward an ecologically sensitive view of the educational process. The ecological worldview is often addressed in holistic education through ecological literacy, where topics such as environmental issues, dialogues with nature, the interdependence of reality, and sustainability are explored. Edward Clarke, David Orr, and Ramon Nova have been some of the most active contemporary holistic educators in this area. Systems theory is a theoretical attempt to explore the cosmic world. Similarly to the ecological worldview, systems theory also recognizes the interdependence of all things, but its exploration of the subject is based on systemic explanations of the dynamic structure of the universe, or the cosmic world. This systemic worldview is present in the holistic theory of Ron Miller, a theory based on multiple levels of wholeness. In the integrated curriculum of Edward Clarke, a systemic curriculum built on system thinking. And in the work of few other scholars, most notably Thomas Berry and Atsuhiko Yoshida, in the field of holistic education. Thomas Berry provided one of the most magnificent visions of education that has ever emerged. Education, in his view, is not a human enterprise, but rather an ongoing process of the universe itself. Yoshida appeared in the discussion of Japanese life philosophy, tried to develop his model of holistic education through his extensive studies in postmodern, non-mechanistic, non-reductionistic, systemic sciences, including Jancha's theory of the self-organizing universe. The most relevant work of Noddings to holistic education has been her ideas on caring relations. Noddings has proposed a caring-centered education that calls for the cultivation of relations of care in school, which includes caring for the self, for the inner circle, for distant others, for animals, plants, and the earth, for the human-made world, and for the world of ideas. Similar to Noddings, but focusing more on the egalitarian aspects of relationships, Isla designed a model of education, which she called a partnership education. Noddings' thoughts on caring relations and Isla's ideas on partnership education are directly or indirectly present in the works of virtually every holistic educator. For methodological purpose only, holistic education has noted 4 pillars of learning in the 21st century. This starts with learning to ask. To ask is a natural act of consciousness in its search for knowledge. Its real purpose is not so much for the question to be answered as to be explored. Learning to learn means empowering the attributes of consciousness to exercise skills such as paying attention, listening, perceiving, and developing curiosity, intuitiveness, and creativity. Learning to learn means having the ability to direct and take responsibility for one's own learning, for keeping oneself up to date, for knowing where to look for knowledge. This type of learning is radically different from acquiring itemized codified information or factual knowledge, as often stressed in conventional curriculum and in rote learning. Rather, it implies the mastering of the instruments of knowledge themselves. Learning to do is linked learning a profession and to productive work, learning to adapt to the needs of work and ability to work in a team, along with the strategic use of knowledge to resolve problems and make rational decisions in generating quality goods and services. Learning to do means knowing how to take risks as well as take the initiative. This pillar of learning implies in the first place for application of what learners have learned or known into practices. It is closely linked to vocational technical education and work skills training. However, it goes beyond narrowly defined skills development for doing the specific things or practical tasks in traditional or industrial economies. The emerging knowledge-based economy is making human work increasingly immaterial. Learning to do calls for new types of skills, more behavioral than intellectual. The material and the technology are becoming secondary to human qualities and interpersonal relationship. This pillar implies an education taking two complementary paths. On one level, discovery of others, and on another, experience of shared purposes throughout life. Specifically, it implies the development of such qualities as knowledge and understanding of self and others, appreciation of the diversity of the human race, and an awareness of the similarities between and the interdependence of all humans, empathy, respect of other people and their cultures and value systems. Learning to be means the discovery of true human nature and encounter with the essence of oneself, which goes beyond the psychic apparatus of thoughts and emotion. It is learning to belong to the whole. It is the discovery of our universal dimension. It is the discovery of one's own being, and the inner wisdom achieved through self-knowledge. Holistic education nurtures this learning in a special way, by recognizing the human being as a basically spiritual being in search of meaning. Learning to be may therefore be interpreted in one way as learning to be human, through acquisition of knowledge, skills and values conducive to personality development in its intellectual, moral, cultural, and physical dimensions. This implies a curriculum aiming at cultivating qualities of imagination and creativity, developing a person's potential, memory, reasoning, aesthetic sense, physical capacity, and communication social skills, developing critical thinking, and exercising independent judgment. Wholeness holds that everything in the universe is interconnected to everything else. Everything that exists is related in a context of interconnectedness and meaning, and any change or event affects everything else. The whole is more than the sum of its parts. This means that the whole is comprised of relational patterns that are not contained in the parts. Therefore, a phenomenon can never be understood in isolation. The person is viewed as an integral being with 6 essential elements: physical, emotional, intellectual, social, aesthetic, and spiritual. These 6 elements play a fundamental role in the learning process. Even though, traditionally, the cognitive aspect has been favored, holistic education recognizes the importance of balance among the 6 elements. Holistic educators do not see the student as a brain that must be programmed, but rather as a whole being. In the course of human interaction, a community can be comprised of the school, the town, or even the family. When holistic education work with the school as a context, they transform it into a stimulating learning community, and meaning is acquired through the relationship with others. Learning how to establish appropriate human relationships is an objective of education, and to the goals we impose upon ourselves as a society. It is a crucial dimension of holistic education, given society's current situation, replete with the prevailing value of exploitation, control, success, and competition. The ideal of unlimited economic growth has resulted in people pinning their hopes for happiness on the consumption of products and superfluous gratifications. Holistic education recognizes this social crisis. The planet is the fourth context of our lives and of the learning process. Traditionally, the planet has not been taken into account because it has not been perceived as a context for holistic educators. The planet is Gaia, a complex and harmonious organism of dynamic processes and integrated whole that is alive and self-regulating, of which human societies, as well as economic, political, and cultural systems, are dependent subsystems. The primary whole, the complete context that gives meaning to our being, the spiritual dimension of human existence. In holistic education, taking recourse in the cosmos is the most significant response to the serious crisis humanity is now facing, and perennial human spiritual values, the dualism and fragmentation, are completely overcome, and the self and all else in existence come together and awaken consciousness to its true nature. It is within this context that universal love, unconditional trion, brotherhood, peace, and compassion bloom. The essential meaning of the cosmos can only be understood through direct experience. The goal of holistic education is best encapsulated by the term ultimacy. He defined ultimacy as one of the highest state of being that a human can aspire to, either as a stage of development, enlightenment, as a moment of life that is the greatest but only rarely experienced by anyone, or as a phase of life that is common in the population, but usually rare in any particular individual's life. For example, Maslow's peak experience, the concern or engagement that is the greatest that a person can aspire to. For example, being in service to something sacred. These two meanings can overlap or intertwine. Ultimacy, also called enlightenment or union with cosmic harmony, is a common theme throughout the holistic literature. It is the highest potential of the student who is involved in a holistic educational process. Forbes promotes the theme of ultimacy, and through his research, provides enlightenment as to the philosophical coherence of what distinguishes holistic education from mainstream approaches to education. The notions of ultimacy lead holistic educators to their views of human nature and meaningful living. Holistic educators claim their view of original goodness stands in opposition to that of original sin, and that different views concerning the need or lack of need to control and shape children necessarily follow. Holistic educators feel they have a different view of development, which holds that people will naturally go towards the good, and that progress consists largely of unfolding, uncovering, or discovering what is natural or inherent in the child. The primary purpose of education is to nourish the inherent possibilities of human development. Schools must be places that facilitate the whole development of all learners. Each learner is unique, inherently creative, with individual needs and abilities. This means welcoming personal differences and fostering in each student a sense of tolerance, respect, and appreciation for human diversity. Each individual is inherently creative, has unique physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual needs and abilities, and possesses an unlimited capacity to learn. Education is a matter of experience, and learning is primarily experiential. Learning is an active, multisensory engagement between an individual and the world, a mutual contact which empowers the learner and reveals the rich meaningfulness of the world. Experience is dynamic and ever-growing. The goal of education must be to nurture natural, healthy growth through experience, and not to present a limited, fragmented, predigested curriculum as the path to knowledge.